This is the Jerry Doyle Show.
One of the benefits of being a call screener in radio is that you get to talk to the guests that I'm fortunate enough to get to talk to a lot longer with than Kelly, our call screener, who is completely beside himself right now because he got to talk to our guest, Stanton Friedman. Kelly's a long time, not so much sci-fi, but more along the lines of aliens, what's out there, the myth versus the fact. And Stanton Friedman, huge in that area. Nuclear physicist, lecturer, author, UFO researcher. Been talking about this since 1967, lecturing more than 600 colleges, 100 different professional groups up in Canada, 18 other countries. He's published more than 90 UFO papers. He's the original civilian investigator of the Roswell incident. He's provided written testimony, congressional hearings, appeared twice at the United Nations, and he is appearing with us now on the program. Stanton Friedman, welcome to the show.
Delighted to be here.
Now, I was always a big fan of space travel, but not so much a fan of science fiction or alternative life forms until I was fortunate enough to be on the show Babylon 5 for the 5 years that series ran. And it really opened a lot of doors to me as to who was interested in the notion of other extraterrestrial life, aliens, intelligent, sentient beings, or whatever, however it is it's described. And I was fascinated by the people that were fascinated by it. You certainly a fascinating individual. And would I be correct in calling you a skeptical believer of there's something out there?
Well, that's one way to put it. I'm a scientist who believes evidence comes first, conclusions come later. And belief is, chocolate tastes better than vanilla. That's a belief system. I go by evidence and data. I've been to 20 archives, document archives. I've talked to loads of people. I've been reading the literature. And I have done debates with disbelievers. Skeptical I am. That means you don't make a decision about what's true until you've looked at the evidence. There are 4 basic rules for debunkers. I'm not one of those. Those are, don't bother me with the facts. My mind's made up. What the public doesn't know, I'm not going to tell them. If you can't attack the data, attack the people. It's easier. And do your research by proclamation because investigation is too much trouble. That's the debunker. Now, I've been, as I say, to 20 archives. I've been investigating for an awful long time. And I've worked in some of the areas that are directly related to the questions related to UFOs. In other words, can governments keep secrets? Can you get here from there? I worked under security for 14 years. I worked for major corporations like GE, GM, Westinghouse, Aerojet General, McDonnell Douglas, TRW Systems. I worked on more canceled government-sponsored research and development programs than anybody else, as far as I can tell. And so I am in a much better position than most to decide what secrets can be kept. Where is the evidence? And it's one of the things, when I do debates, and I've done several, including at the Oxford University Debating Society, a very venerable institution indeed, and what I find is that the debunkers do their research by proclamation. They haven't studied the evidence. I won a debate by 80% on coast-to-coast radio once because the other guy started off by saying something that was totally untrue and hadn't done his homework. So it's easy to deal with that. So, yes, I'm skeptical, and I have what I call a big gray basket, not black, not white, maybe. People want me to say yes or no to every question. Do you believe this? Do you believe that? And I have to say sometimes I don't know enough to have an opinion or rational opinion.
Right. Well, you said something, Mr. Friedman, about the question is, can governments keep secrets? If governments weren't governments of people, supposedly by and for the people, I would say maybe a government could keep a secret. But in this overnight celebrity, fame-addicted world that we live in, some of those people that are in that government, to me, would want their day in the spotlight, that they would want to sell their story, that the maybe on a deathbed confession, here's what I know, here's what's Area 50 has area, here's what's going, this is what really happened, this is the story of Apollo 18, which is part of your intro before about this movie, that supposedly there was this secret mission that was funded by the DoD, NASA denying its authenticity. And the movie is supposed to give us the real reason why we've never gone back to the moon. Some would say we never went there in the first place. That's why there's no place to go back to.
Well, I'm convinced we've been to the moon. And indeed, I'm convinced that people working on government-sponsored R&D programs can keep secrets. I've helped keep some of them. Let me give you some example. My book, Flying Saucers in Science, which is listed at my website, www.stantonfriedman.com, very easy to find, lists a number of examples. One of my favorites is because I like to smoke cigars, is the Corona spy satellite. The first successful one after 12 failures, all done in secret, went up in 1960. It got more data on Soviet military installations than all the U-2 flights that preceded it. That was very important to the United States because we didn't know whether they had missiles and rockets and all kinds of stuff all over the place, or whether there was only a little bit here and a little bit there. That one was successful. They launched several more that were also successful. The first public discussion about the Corona spy satellite was not in 1961 or 62 or 72 or 82. It was in 1995. There had to be a lot of people involved in that program because the way of getting back data was dropping it from space and catching it by airplanes going by and stuff like that. Really sophisticated. And these programs are big. And it was kept secret all that time. That's one example. Another example, of course, was the stealth aircraft program. Over a period of 10 years, Lockheed, well, the government through Lockheed, spent $10 billion developing the stealth aircraft. In secrecy, mind you. Now, $10 billion represents a lot of people, a lot of money. And people seem to have no idea in the, quote, civilian world how big some of these projects are. To give one example, when I worked on nuclear airplanes for General Electric, major corporate enterprise, back in between 56 and 59, I worked for them in Cincinnati. In 1958, we spent $100 million. We employed 3,500 people, of whom 1,100 were engineers and scientists. And most people have never heard of the program. But one of my favorites, because this is big bucks, the National Reconnaissance Office, the NRO, they're in charge of the big spy satellites, some of which cost $500 million for one piece of equipment up there. You know, the kind that read the license plates in the parking lot at the Kremlin, that sort of thing.
Right.
Anyway, they admitted 3 years ago that they had to cancel a program they had with Boeing to change the architecture of spy satellites, how components are arranged and so forth. They had only spent $13 billion, and that was all in secret.